In this video, we're looking at rational numbers. So numbers can be broken into two categories. The first one being what we call rational numbers, and that itself can be broken into two more, but mainly rational numbers and irrational numbers are the two different categories of numbers. So if we're looking at our rational numbers, the first one we're going to introduce is what we call terminating decimals. Now this is probably what you're most used to, and these include numbers such as 8, 1.2. You have fractions such as 48 over 6 or 7 over 1. All right, they end. They have a point where they end, such as 1.2. There's no numbers after that. Now we have reoccurring decimals. Now these are things such as 0.33333, and it just keeps going on forever in that pattern, or negative 1.4 repeater. All right, sometimes you'll see it like that. Some fractions such as 1 over 6, because that's 0.6 repeater. So when we're talking about reoccurring decimals, it's when there's a pattern involved. So you can actually see the pattern. Yes, they do go on forever, but it's the same number. There's a pattern involved. So those are rational numbers. So those are the two different types. Terminating decimals, which have an endpoint. Reoccurring decimals, which have some sort of a pattern going on. Now the next one is what we call irrational numbers. So irrational numbers are numbers where the decimals just go on forever. There's no real pattern. Sometimes they're represented as symbols. So you may have seen the symbol pi. That's an irrational number. It goes on forever, but there's no pattern to it. We also have things, what we call surds, which is like root 2, root 5. These are surds. Okay. The next thing we want to look at briefly is fractions. So we should all have a somewhat good understanding of fractions. And there's two main parts of a fraction that we need to get the terminology right. So we have, let's say we have a fraction a over b. The top part of the fraction up here is known as the numerator. Now it's important you remember that, because that from now on, that's what we're going to be calling that when we're talking about fractions. And then down the bottom here, we have the denominator. So it's important you understand that the top is numerator, bottom is denominator. Next, we're going to look at all the different types of fractions you can have. So the first one we're looking at is what we call equivalent fractions. So equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value. They might be different numbers, but overall they are the same thing. So the first thing we're going to look at is just give you some examples of these. So let's say I had 2 over 3, right? An equivalent fraction would be if I just doubled everything, 4 over 6, or I could have 8 over 12. Yes, they're different numbers, but they make up the same space. Okay, so if I can let's look at here. We have a box. It's cut in half. This part here, that's 1 over 2. Okay, and it's cut in half. So let's see, we have another box, but this time it's cut into 4s, and then it's shaded here. Well, this is 2 over 4, but you can see, yes, different numbers, but they take up the same space, so they're equivalent. All right, the next thing we're going to look at is proper fractions. So a proper fraction occurs when the numerator, the top number, is smaller than the denominator. So we're looking at things such as 2 over 7, 4 over 6, 10 over 15, where the top number is smaller than the bottom. The next one is improper fractions. So this occurs when the numerator is larger than the denominator. So this includes things such as 10 over 3, 7 over 6, 2 over 1. They're all improper fractions. A mixed numeral. So this is where there's a whole number plus a fraction. So 1.5 would be a mixed numeral. 2 2/3. 4 and 4 over 5. Those are mixed numerals. Okay, now sometimes it's good to know how to actually convert that to an improper fraction. All you need to do is multiply the number at the front with the bottom, and then add it to the top. So multiply that, and then plus it to the top. So 1 times 2 is 2. So now we have 2 plus our 1 on the top over that. So 3 over 2. Alright, so 1.5 is the same as 3 over 2. When we're comparing fractions, it's important to note that you need the denominator really to be the same. Okay, so it makes it clear. So which is the larger fraction? So let's say we have 4 over 5 or 8 over 9. We need to somehow determine which of these is the larger fraction. So what we're going to use is what I like to call cross multiplication. So if I rewrite these down here, 4 over 5 and 8 over 9, cross multiplication involves multiplying the bottom and multiplying across like that. So it forms a cross. So what we end up with is 4 times 9 over 5 times 9 and 8 times 5 over 5 times 9. Now if you put those in the calculator or do the math in your head, we end up with 36 over 45, and over here we end up with 40 over 45. So we can say that our 8 over 9 is larger because we have the same denominator, so we can make it a 1-to-1. We can be like, oh yep, 40 is definitely bigger than 36.